What's going on, y'all? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. This week, we're back for more min-maxing for fun and profit, breaking out the Thaumaturge archetype, finding somewhere to put on that, and leading us to something I've wanted to mess around with for a while, but I'm now really getting to dig into. This week, we are building around the Bones Oracle. If you're liking what you're seeing, like, subscribe, ding the bell, stay caught up on all your stuff. Remember that Patreon gets you Google Sheets, gets you a bunch of builds, gets you a bunch of other cool stuff, helps make sure these videos can keep coming out on the channel, but for now, let's dive in. Okie dokie. So, before we dive into everything, let's first discuss what the archetype gives you. It of course requires a charisma of 14. You get a single implement, which you can use to glimpse vulnerability, a one-action manipulate action once per round that lets you pick a creature you can see, and until you glimpse again, they gain weakness 2 against your unarmed attacks and weapon strikes. By level 6, you get the initiate ability of whatever implement you chose, but no esoteric lore, no scaling other implements, or things like mortal vulnerability. There's a lot of different things you can do with this. Shout out to Ranger Thaumaturge or Thaumaturge Rangers who are passing out way too many bonuses to hit a single target and helping the whole party just make it fucking dead. And honestly, something like the Chalice looks good on anybody who can archetype in just for a little bit of temp HP or healing. But since we don't get a lot of the big over-the-top things that the Thaumaturge can get with the archetype, I decided, rather than lean into things I've already talked about or things we did in the playtest, to discuss something we haven't seen yet, the Wand. The initiate benefit of the Wand gives you a 2-action activity that lets you throw magic at a target within 60 feet, and do damage equal to a d4 plus your charisma mod to a target with a basic reflex save against your class DC. This damage being cold, electricity, or fire chosen when you got the wand. This damage scales up at 3rd and every 2 levels thereafter by 1d4. You can turn the d4s into d6s, but if you do, the wand is pseudo-overcharged and can't be activated again until 1d4 rounds later, like a breath weapon, but hits less people. If you critically hit with a strike, however, the wand recharges automatically. Compared to a lot of other things the Thaumaturge can get up to, this isn't as exciting as some other stuff, but you know what it is? It's a really interesting, scaling cantrip ability that does damage, which sort of formed the mental crux for this build. You know who doesn't have good scaling damage cantrips? Divine casters. Well, Divine Lance aside, but that one's about as good as all of the evil things you're fighting in your game, right? So stapling this onto a divine spellcasting class gives them a cantrip-like ability that scales really well, that can be upcast to scale even better, while leaving their cantrips to fill out things like stabilize or guidance or other really cool stuff that they get. So today we are stapling the Thaumaturge archetype onto the shell of the Oracle. Specifically today I think the Bones Oracle. Partially because, well, to speak frankly, 'tis the season. And also partially because it has a lot of things in-house that support someone who wants to be up in melee stabbing people. Specifically, out the gate, Soul Siphon. For one action, the target must attempt a fortitude save or take 1d4 negative damage. You gain temp HP equal to the total amount of HP the target loses, including if they fail or crit fail the HP loss from becoming drained. This scales plus 1d4 for every spell level, and this being one action and this not interacting with the map gives us an in-house healing ability that hurts and debuffs people, which is really fucking cool. But in return, of course, we get cursed about it. The minor curse causing non-magical effects that would restore our hit points to only heal for half. The moderate curse making us drained 1, but also granting resistance to poison equal to half our level, then a +4 status bonus to saves against disease, poisons, and death effects. Successes on such saves become crit successes. And then lastly, the major curse makes us wounded 1. This wounded condition is only removed when we refocus, and effects that normally reduce our wounded condition can only reduce us to wounded 1. When we're making recovery checks, however, we can choose to get an automatic success instead of rolling. And if we roll a critical failure on saves against disease, poisons, or death effects, we get a failure instead. So this is like pseudo-immortality, right? Let's say we're wounded 1, and we get stabbed, and then we go to dying 3 because it was a critical hit, right? When it comes around to us, when we attempt a recovery check, we just, we're good. And we just pass on that forever, and we hope that the bad guys aren't dropping fireballs where we lay down prone, or that they're not stabbing us, because that would be rude. The Bones Mystery also gives us negative healing, but we're going to take the upside, make our recovery checks 9 plus our dying value. Today we're playing a Dhampir. Again, 'tis the season. Seems correct to do, right? Additionally, because we're going to need to have one hand on our implement, that's what she said, one hand for somatic components, we're going to want something to attack with, though it's going to take us a minute to get there. And in the early game, we're probably attacking by casting harm at things, truthfully. Eventually, we'll punch them with our teeth, but for now, for our starting ability scores, we're looking at a strength of 16 because we want to stab people, a dexterity and constitution of 12 to keep us flexible and not going from quasi-dead to totally dead, an intelligence and wisdom of 10, and a charisma of 18, as it is our primary stat and our casting stat. Now, class feats times. Did I mention our Dhampir is going to be a human? It's going to be a human. Casters want to be humans. They want to get that bonus feat at first level. We'll grab Glean Lore. Why? Because these are like my favorite narrative devices in all of tabletop role-playing game history, so we're going to always take it. For one action, we attempt a religion check, tapping into the collected lore of the divine. On a critical success, we comprehend the lore accurately or gain a useful clue about whatever the hell's going on right now, whatever in the plot that we aren't quite picking up. Hang on, what's this mean? Religion check. A success gives us one true piece of information and one false. A failure gives us something misleading, and a crit failure gives us 2 misleading things. Maybe jam assurance religion in here at some point, depending on what the GM sets the DC as. But again, I just think these are really fucking cool narrative devices, so I always want to grab them. At level 2, we'll pick up Reach spell to increase the range of our spells by 30 feet for one action to make our 2 action harms go a little bit farther. 60-foot nukes feel pretty good. Of course, because this whole build shtick is the free archetype, we're gonna be taking free archetype and follow this card right up here. If you and are on the fence about running it, here's why you should. At level 2, we of course grab the Thaumaturge Dedication. At level 4, because it's definitely not a phase mom, and because we really like using our focus points, Irizoko Tattoo just feels like a super staple for basically every class that gets it, right? Once per day, grab a focus point is a 3-action activity when you don't have the 10 minutes to stop and refocus, or when the combat's going a little long and you just really need temporary HP right now. It dawns on me we didn't super talk about the domain we're taking. Oopsie fucking do. Death Domain. Death's Call out the gate. It's a reaction when a living creature within 20 feet of you dies, or an undead creature within 20 feet of you is destroyed. You gain temp HP equal to the triggering creature's level plus your spellcasting ability modifier, double if it was undead. But now that we're caught up on that, moving on. Because a half-vampire Oracle of Death Gods wasn't, like, edgy enough, I guess. It's never edgy enough, spoiler alert. Divine Disharmony for our free archetype feat. For one action, you grab some opposing divine things and put them together, and you make all of your religious friends super fucking angry in the span of a couple seconds. When you do this, roll your choice of a deception or intimidation check against the will DC of a creature you can see within 60 feet. If the creature is particularly devoted to a deity, and you knew that from the plot, and you remembered to go to ye old general store that has everything and be like, hey, can I buy a wooden symbol of plot deity? So much the better, that +2 circumstance bonus to the skill check. On a success, the creature is flat-footed to your attacks until the end of your current turn. On a critical success, the creature is flat-footed to your attacks until the end of your next turn, which makes it easier to critically hit with weapons, which makes it easier to critically hit with spell attacks, which makes it easier to recharge the wand. At level 6, we'll grab Advanced Revelation for another focus point, and the advanced spell from the Bones Mystery, Armor of Bones, which definitely reads like it's mage armor but evil flavored, but actually is resistance 3 to cold, electricity, fire, piercing, and slashing damage, upping by +1 for every +1 caster level. One action to cast lasts for a minute. The scaling is what it is, but it covers a very wide amount of damage types, so yeah, no, seems good. At level 6, we'll also grab Implement Initiate here, so now suddenly that magic wand we're caring about does more than cause a weakness to our stabs happening. We're going to be doing a lot of jumping around back and forth. Grabbing a 4th level feat at level 8, Divine Access. You choose a deity and add up to 3 cleric spells of our choice that deity grants to our spell list. From the Death Domain, we will be choosing the Mistress of Blood all the way from Tian Sha Yejing for a couple of really fancy spells for exactly what we want to get up to. First, Invisibility. Not normally on our list, but heightening this up as a 4th level cast leaves us attacking flat-footed things very easily, leaves us landing critical hits very easily. as well as True Strike, that one action swing with fortune, 51% of the time roll a 15 or better. This also grabs us Mislead, a spell that turns us invisible, as per a 4th level invisibility, but it also creates an illusory duplicate of ourselves, and when we sustain the spell, the duplicate does a thing and might trick folks into believing we're in one place when we're actually not. Seems really good. On the free archetype side, we're going to jump out of Thaumaturge for a while. A lot of the Thaumaturge feats require us to have something that the archetype doesn't give us, so we'll get what we need and grab everything else, and we'll consider that a blessing of the archetype, really, because that frees up a lot of feat slots to go poke around in other places. This time, specifically, the Sentinel dedication. How in the goddamn have I never talked about this? It's so good. Oracles are trained in light armor. We'll grab armor proficiency at level 3 to get to medium, and then Sentinel will get us training in heavy armor as well. Super good for the necromancer who wants to be up in their face stabbing. At level 10, Quicken Casting lets us cast quickenedly, a once per day free action to reduce the number of actions when casting a spell, and Armor Specialist on the free archetype side to get the armor specialization effects of medium and heavy armor. Man, why doesn't this link? That's so annoying. Archives of Nethys, if you watch these videos, fix this. Please. I beg of you. This gives us a resistance to slashing damage equal to 2 plus the value of our armor's potency rune, assuming we're wearing full plate. I think we want to be, to have resistance even when we haven't ossified our flesh. Man, that's metal as hell. At level 12, Domain Fluency will get us the advanced domain spell from the Death Domain, which we cast as a revelation spell. Rather than Eradicate Undeath, because I don't think that is what we're about at all this time, we're going to grab the Apocryphal Domain spell. Don't tell Pharasma, do tell Yejing and other necromantic powers that be that Yejing strictly isn't, but Euphoric Renewal, check this out. For 2 actions, lasting 10 minutes, this is a really long buff in the span of 2nd edition. Each time you gain the dying condition and then regain consciousness while under the effect of this spell, or a lot of times when we are not carrying a shield, have lower HP than the barbarians and fighters, and generally speaking, being a caster in the front row, you gain 3 effects. 1 being you are quickened on your next turn, using the extra action only to get back up again. You gain a +1 circumstance bonus to saves for a minute, and 8 temp HP that lasts for a minute. +1 heightened increases the temp HP by 2. This is heightened by the time we get it to 6th, I believe. Fun fact, there's a bluegrass concert going on across the street from me right now, and the bass is reverberating the walls of my apartment, and also my brain, so math. More temp HP, more good. Getting up for free is dope. Buffing your saves is dope. Viewing death not as an ending, but a beginning, also metal is all fucking get out. On the archetype side, Mighty Bulwark increases the bulwark trait from plate mail, meaning not worrying about your dex when you're reflex saving versus most of the things you're reflex saving against, 2 + 4. And it applies on all reflex saves and not just the damaging ones, so that's really fucking cool. Seriously, man, Sentinel is such a good archetype. How the hell have I missed it? Damn it, Tommy. At level 14, god, this is so late, but Bespell Weapon. Once per turn, when we cast Harm on somebody, or any of our focus spells, until the end of our turn, when we hit someone, we deal a d6 of extra damage, and since we're incentivized to attack, yeah, seems great, right? You know what also seems great? The notion that death is only the beginning. I haven't got a chance to mess around with any of the undead archetypes. Now seems like a great time to do so. This is Halloween. Let's grab the zombie dedication next. Seems reasonable by level 14 that we might have a plot death that causes us to revive an unlife and have our arms fall off, or create an undead ritual or something like to partially unalive yourself. The dedication itself gets us the undead and zombie traits, the basic undead benefits, Necroll, Dark Vision, because we won't get it from Ancestry feats, Negative Healing, which we already had, thanks Mom or Dad, Immunity to Death effects, a +1 circumstance bonus to saves, or any other defense against disease and poison, and a craving for the flesh of the living. That's probably fine. This will also reduce all of our speeds by 5, and each day after our rest period we'll have to stitch our skin back up together, lest we become deteriorated or slowed 1. Our Jaws attack goes from 1d6 from the Dhampir to 1d8 if we're grabbing people, but we're probably not going to. But we will grab some really interesting cool shit here. But moving on, level 16, Oracular Warning. It's a free action. When you're about to roll initiative, one ally of our choice rolls twice for initiative and uses the better. By now we could theoretically be legends in religion, so we can pass the fortune out to 2 people. Unfortunately, you will have to roll for initiative and use the worst result. And if you would negate the worst one, you wouldn't get the better one, so definitely don't take that thaumaturge reaction that I tweeted about that I definitely thought would let you wombo combo out and just be fine. Thank you, AJ, by the by. I'm really glad that was pointed out before I just started shouting my mouth off somewhere else on the internet. Yunaman, this is still pretty good though. We're gonna be slow. I honestly call it a hot take, but in my years of playing role-playing games, I think going last in initiative is almost always better than going first, unless you're trying to start a surprise round or it's like high level 1E and you're playing rocket tag. A lot of the time, it's just better to see where everyone is gonna land, so you know where the most effective thing can be. On the archetype side, we'll grab out of hand, because who didn't ever want to yank their arm off and turn it into a familiar, right? This gets us the lay down arms action. Who wrote that? Pat yourself on the back, that's hilarious. For one action, you yoink your arm off, drop it in an adjacent square. You can also use this action to glue it back on. This gets us a little hand familiar. Its speed is 5 feet, it can't move further than 100 feet from you, it can interact with things, it can make any unarmed strikes it could have made while attached to you, sharing your map, using your attack bonus, and your damage. If it ever is reduced to 0 hit points, using the stats of a familiar, it becomes inert until you go grab it. Send the hand forward. The hand has your proficiency. Your punching lost the non-lethal trait when you became a zombie. This isn't horrible, if for no other reason. Well, you can't flank with yourself because it would theoretically be tiny. Sending your hand to open the door that might be trapped or to walk in the trap, as opposed to sending the you? Yeah, no, there's a lot of benefit there. It's also kind of funny. At level 18, Blaze of Revelation will let us forestall the effects of drawing on our curse too much for up to a minute. On each of your turns in that minute, you can cast 1 Revelation spell granted by your mystery, but not the domain spells, without spending focus points or taking any further negatives, but at the end, make a DC 40 Fortitude save. I really hate that this doesn't have the death tag on it, because if this had the death tag on it, the zombie would be slightly better at it. Damn it, on a critical success, you're good. On a success, you're drained 2. On a failure, you're drained 4. On a crit failure, you die. So that would be bad. Don't do that. We'll be incredibly ironic and grab Unkillable at the same time, to just be as tongue-in-cheek as possible. As a reaction, when you would be reduced to 0 hit points, you are instead reduced to 1. You gotta succeed at a DC 6 flat check or your body deteriorates, and then you start spamming all the temporary HP spells that you have. And at level 20, Scapegoat Parallel Self, eat shit version of us with a goatee. Who am I kidding? We're the ones with the goatee in this dynamic. As a reaction, when your turn starts or your oracular curse would advance, you immediately change your curse to its minor, moderate, or major stage, or back to its mild form. And instead, someone in an alternate universe gets fucked, I guess. It's kind of hilarious, and they probably won't bend space and time to punch you about it. Probably. Don't quote me on that. For legal reasons, I cannot guarantee that they won't try to punch you. GMs, isn't this a great resource to punch your players? I thought so. And then lastly, Corpse Stench. Any creature that starts its turn in a 10-foot aura around you must succeed at a fort save against our presumed spell DC or become sickened 1 plus slowed 1 on a critical failure. While within the aura, the creature takes a -2 circumstance penalty to saves against disease and to recover from the very sickened condition you put on them. If they succeed, they're immune for a minute. But it's a free debuff. Who doesn't love it? Your friends who want to be around you, but they'll get used to it. Probably. Maybe. On the Ancestry feat side, Natural Ambition for that feat at first level, and then Fangs for an unarmed attack that deals a d6 of piercing damage and frees up 1 hand for casting, 1 hand for wanding, and 1 appendage for biting. Bonus points if when you get the ability to yank your hand off, your GM lets you pull your, jaw off? Rip somatic components. Whatever, it's fine. Voice of the Night at level 9 comes on really late, but if given the choice, I'll always take the feats that let me talk to the environment. Bats and rats exist basically everywhere that people do. You should be able to find beings that see things that other humanoids might not necessarily have the ability to, and you get a +1 circumstance bonus to make an impression on them, and you can ask questions of and receive answers from, and use diplomacy with bats, rats, and wolves. It's too bad that this doesn't, strictly speaking, extend to winter wolves or other wargs. But I mean, a pack of dire wolves, even in mid-game play, though they be considerably lower level, they have their uses. One of those maybe being reanimated later if we can find the rituals to do so, which would be very flavorful for this build. Then next, Bounce Back. Once per day when we lose the dying condition, we don't increase the value of our wounded condition due to losing the dying condition. Seems really good on the guy who's going to be walking around wounded 1 a lot. And then lastly, Symphony of Blood. For a once per day vampiric exsanguination, temp HP is a whole mood with this build, you'd see it. Then for the general feats, it's armor training at level 3 because our dex kinda sucks and we want it before we get to Sentinel. Then toughness for more HP than Die Hard, or Bruce Springsteen will show up at my house and beat me up, is why I'm still taking this. Yippee-ki-yay, I guess. That incredible initiative, we're gonna need it if we're rolling with disadvantage, even though I like going last. There definitely are cases where you don't want to be the very bottom of the pack, whether you are the victim of the ambush or the one setting the ambush. Then, Canny Acumen, choosing Reflex. But before we get out of here, we're playing a caster, so we gotta talk spells, let's hit them. The name of this game is attack people, get critical hits, give things weakness to our attacks with the option to have a ranged ability in one hand. In a lot of ways, this will probably feel like a cleric with the trickery domain, or like a very magic-y rogue. True Strike, of course, remains so good we gotta leave it here because it's so important for those crits to double that weakness up. But on the supportive side, first up, Drop Dead. It's a reaction when a creature within range is hit by an attack from an enemy, up to 120 feet. Its duration is sustained up to a minute. And yet again, I'd really like to just jam the witch on to cackle, wouldn't I? Whether this be you, or a friend, or like a really hilarious way to sustain this on an enemy who's invisibly screaming, "No, you idiot, I'm alive!" while they're looking at the dead body and presuming it's a ghost. I think that would be funny. But really, the best use case for this one is when one of your friends or you get hit, an illusory version of them falls down dead, but they actually turn invisible. The illusion looks and feels like a corpse. If the target's death seems absurd, an immediate perception check to disbelieve happens. If a target uses hostile actions, the spell ends. Heightening this to level 7 means that the spell doesn't end, is a greater invisibility with an upside. Ah, what the hell hit me? Definitely wasn't dead Grognak. Grognak's dead. I can see him dead right here. Heroism feels so staple on a 10-minute buff to grant a status bonus to ourself and or our friends to attack rolls, perception checks, saves, and skill checks. Heightening this up to 9th eventually makes it a +3. Speaking of status bonuses, Bless's status bonus to attacks within a 5-foot emanation, whether or not you concentrate to increase this range, is really good to help us hedge our bets when we're attacking, and then later on can be made bigger to help out everybody else as well. Just don't tell the paladin where that blessing comes from, he's not gonna fucking like it. Then, lastly, because we've talked about all the other cool stuff I want to take on this build, Command, a level 1 spell for 2 actions. You can either command the target to approach you, run away, release what it's holding, drop prone, or stand in place. This causes them to lose the ability to delay or take any reactions until they've obeyed the command. Nothing happens on a success. On a failure for their first action, the creature must use the single action to do that. On a critical failure, they have to use all of them. Heightening to 5th hits up to 10 creatures. All of you drop your weapons. Then have everybody else in the party interact to pick up their weapons. How quickly did you just take the fangs out of the fighters that you're fighting, right? Everyone drop prone. You, drop prone. It would be easier for me to hit you with this third action to then lean down and rip your throat out. Get away from the wizard, come attack me. Oh shit, we're in trouble. Run away now. Modal spells are really cool. Command has been a staple for so long throughout so many editions of this game. Seems hard to ignore, right? But anyway around it, there stands the build. Jamming the wand implement on any charisma-based caster frees up a cantrip, and having that extra tool in a toolbox of something that already feels really good, it's hard to ignore, you know? Since resources can be kind of limited into any toolbox type build, or any build that has more resources going on in it, is so much the better in my opinion, and so I'm really into this. But that's all the time I have for this one. What do y'all think? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Now that I'm caught up on all the new Paizo stuff, next week I'm diving back into the request line. So, as always, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.